Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the People's House, a discussion forum on issues that matter to Barbadians. And tonight we have a very interesting episode up for you. We have our former Minister of Tourism and International Transport, Mr. Richard Seeley, with us, and we look forward to the discussion. We have those joining us on YouTube and Facebook, and our in-studio audience who joins us every week and are so supportive. So thank you, Mr. Seeley, for joining us. Now,
thank you, Stacey, for having me.
Yes, we've had an interesting week of discussion in the estimates in the lower house. Tourism has been the focus, I think, since last Thursday, which would have been March 1st. And we've had discussion with the Minister of Tourism, Mr. Ian Gooding-Edgell, and his officials within the well of Parliament. There have been claims that the numbers are back up to what they were in 2018 when you would have left office. Are you of that belief? Are you seeing that type of traction happening?
I think what they're claiming is that they're on their way back.
Okay.
That's what I understood, that the recovery is going in the right direction. But the truth is, it really couldn't get any worse than during COVID. So
right.
Numbers are supposed to be
trending upwards.
But it would be nice if we were, in fact, seeing record numbers like so many other islands in the Caribbean. We're talking about getting back to pre-COVID levels, while, Jamaica, Grenada, Antigua, they're breaking records.
Yes.
Simply because of the pent-up demand for tourism during COVID when no one could travel. It was always anticipated it would be a bonanza for the Caribbean. And it just looks as though our neighbors have benefited more than we have.
Yes.
And of course that's unfortunate, but it is a reality and something that we have to continue to work on.
Yeah. Obviously, within the estimates, we've had, things being said about certain tourism projects. What is your sense in terms of the tourism projects that they've not gotten on board, and those that they have said in terms of like Savannah is being sold? What are your thoughts about property like that being sold at this current period of time, and those tourism projects that have yet to come on board that Barbadians are wondering about?
Well, the leader of the opposition during his period of questioning, he spoke of the government being able to embrace a lot of what the last government left behind. And I see a great deal of that. Truth be told, all of the major tourism projects that are ongoing are projects that were left on the table by the previous government. And I would think that 6 years on, that we should have a few new projects.
Yes.
And that we shouldn't be hearing from government ministers, the project is about to start, project is about to start, is about to start. Since 2018, we've been hearing that. This is now 2024.
Yeah.
I mean, and you go down the list, Sam Lord's Castle is about to be opened in 2024. In 2018, we had completed certainly the showrooms and a couple of the blocks. It should not have taken 6 years to complete. But anyhow, it's here and we are happy. 422 rooms, we had it for 450, but not much of a much-ness. The private sector end of things, the Indigo Hotel that is on in Hastings, they're blocking the road every morning. That was a project that was also left on the drawing board. It's a private sector project where the old Caribbean was. But that is a project as well that was left behind. The Pierhead, in fact, the Pierhead even preceded me. That was since the Owen Arthur administration. So we really haven't seen anything new as far as the projects. The HRL situation, yes, I think it's appropriate that the Barbados Labour Party government should dispose of that asset because they were responsible for putting us in that mess in the first place in earlier administration.
Yes.
So So yes, I'm happy to hear we were able to sell. I think Time Out at the Gap was sold under my time.
Yeah.
It needed a lot of work, and it made sense for the government to get out of the business of running a hotel. Savannah was leased, and I believe that the leaseholder is who is actually going to be purchasing the hotel. The minister's promised details, and we will await that. But you know, we really haven't seen a lot of what has been promised by way of hotel development.
Right.
And it's important because, in essence, our room stock has remained exactly
the
where
same.
it was in 2018. And in order for you to grow the sector, to create more jobs, to earn more foreign exchange, to expand the economy, you need more rooms.
Yeah.
And of course, that is unfortunate. There's also a direct link between rooms and Airlift, which I presume we will get into
Yes.
a little later on this evening.
Yes. Okay, we just took a little glimpse into the estimates. What do you see as really the two differences between two approaches of what the current administration under the BLP is doing and what the DLP would have done with you as minister? What do you see as the major difference in approach to the tourism sector? Is it airlift? Is it rooms, as you spoke about? Is it events and bringing that sector on? Is it sports tourism? What do you think is the major difference between the two?
I think a significant difference is how the ministry is structured.
Okay.
You would have heard actually the current minister defer questions that dealt with investment. Barbados Tourism Investment Inc. is under the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs. It is not under the Ministry of Tourism. So whereas as Minister of Tourism, I had responsibility for the product issues, the marketing issues, and the investment issues.
Right.
That is in another ministry. So to some extent, you know, Minister Gooding-Edger got a little easier than me, in fact. And during estimates as well, not only did I have to get briefs from all those people you saw in the well of the house, I had to also deal with investment, which was a very large one. We were dealing with Sandals, we were dealing with Sam Lords, we were, you know, all of those issues in addition to what he's dealing with. But the important point is that there's a direct link between marketing, product, and investment. And having the Ministry of Tourism over it, it to some extent made a lot of sense. Now, BTI had a responsibility for the concession regime. That has revenue implications, and I don't suppose the Minister of Finance will want a Minister of Tourism to be dealing with those issues. They may want to keep that for themselves. I don't know the rationale. But, you know, there's been a great deal of instability even at the minister level. We've had three ministers of tourism. We've had three ministers of international transport. Of course, we haven't had any change in investment, you know. And Ms. Motley's kept that very close to the chest for different reasons, I guess. But that, I guess, is how it's sort of different. And an estimates process for a minister in the traditional format. You know, you basically got face the fire. You know, you can't defer, you know, Mr. Smith, would you like to take this one? Madam Thing, come get peace here, you know, come on, everybody, take some pressure off of me. I feel in the heat. I didn't read my briefs so goody, so you could help me out here. No, I didn't have those luxuries. I had to face it. And of course, you had an opposition in Parliament then too. That were asking questions and keep you on your toes. But what it has exposed to me is the extent to which, you know, the whole Parliament thing, frankly speaking, is borderline farcical. It is clear that these ministers, I don't even know if they communicate with each other. The way that they're talking and asking questions and expressing surprise that this is going on and that is going on. I would say, well, so wait, they don't meet on a Thursday and talk to one another? You know, it is just what it is, I guess. You know, mollycoddling each other and playing footsie under the table and things like that. But hopefully we can see Parliament become a serious place of debate
business.
in the not too distant future. But this present scenario is not working. And it is clear to me that I think most right-thinking Barbadians have come to that view. And certainly for me, watching this estimates exercise, and this is why I think the presence of an opposition leader has gone down so very well across the board. I think people are just a little tired of the rather pedestrian, lazy approach that ministers take. You don't really have to. You ain't got to prepare nothing. If you got everybody there with you, but you ain't got to prepare nothing. Just let them ask the questions for you. And it was obvious even in the way that questions were deferred, etc. So I think it's a little different. I understand what the framers of this new format are after, and maybe with a parliament that had different numbers in it, it could work. But I still think that the 3-minute thing is just too short sometimes, and the debate is not as rigorous
as you would,
as we would like it to be,
or as you all were used to, because you had opposition.
It was certainly a lot different. Back then.
Okay.
But we will see, of course, how it goes with the second reading speeches, etc. I imagine the Prime Minister will get involved in that. Well, you never know nowadays with her, but hopefully she'll get involved, and the opposition leader will have a chance to develop his points and do what he has to do.
Okay. So since we have that as our base, I'll ask a question. I think I've heard Dr. Yearwood point out there has to be a way to get tourism, which has always been the leader of our economy over the last 30, 40 years, to link to other sectors, whether it be small business, agriculture, whatever the case is. How would you gauge, how is that possible in the current scenario, and what we have going on in agriculture? Quite a bit has been happening or not happening, I would say, in terms of small businesses and being able to procure from that sector as well. What do you think, in terms of your experience, was the best way to create linkages with other sectors in the economy?
Well, we just have to make it happen. I remember when I became minister in 2008, the very first meeting I had at the Ministry of Tourism was with the General Manager of the Barbados Agricultural Society, the largest farmers organization in Barbados. Not because he had just won a seat to congratulate him, this is Mr. James Paul, but because there was a farm-to-table program that was there. The Inter-American Institute for Cooperation and Agriculture, I think, had sponsored it. And the whole idea was to get the hoteliers and restaurateurs to appreciate what was on offer in the farming community in an organized way. Yes, some farmers would pack up a Suzuki van and go to hotels and sell their produce and so regularly, but it was a structured program that we had on board, and I think it was the way to go. The best friend of farmers in Barbados could be the tourism sector. I mean, apart from the hotels, you have the cruise ships at home port here. There's no reason why that shouldn't be seen as a market, not only as well. That's the whole point. But having taken that traditional view, there's also a tremendously exciting, and this is where the DLP has to locate its debate now going forward.
Right.
With so many young people on board, the shared economy. Now, you can't get away from how to what extent it is huge in tourism. The Airbnbs, the
Yeah.
Verbos, the HomeAways, and then on the transportation side, you have Lyft and what's the other one that's so popular?
I
When
can't
you go
remember it,
overseas,
yes.
when you need a taxi,
It's
you use
Uber,
the phone.
yes.
Uber, right, Uber, right. You have, I mean, yes, I know we haven't seen that one yet in Barbados, but we can't get away
From the
from
modern.
the whole role of information communication technology, and it is happening in the accommodation sector.
Right.
A lot of Airbnb and people using those other platforms to get accommodation, etc. And it's going to happen in terms of transport and other areas as well. So you see now you have your linkages in the traditional way we spoke
Yes.
about earlier, but also now going forward with the technology elements, etc. And I think that is where we as a country need to focus.
Okay.
And certainly, I mean, as a party, as we go forward and preparing ourselves to be in government in the not too distant future, we have to look at these things, unpack them, develop them, and try and develop policies around them.
Okay, so what do you think? You mentioned concessions just now. What do you think about the idea of restaurants or hotels getting concessions in terms of if they bring in more local entertainers? I know this is something they've been doing for years. Is that something that the government should consider at this particular juncture coming out of COVID? And obviously, restaurants and hotels have suffered quite a lot over the last couple of years, and we haven't rebounded, as you said, with like the other countries, like the Grenada's and the Jamaicas. Is that something that the government should consider now?
Yeah, but we haven't rebounded because we don't have any strategic vision in the sector. And the others have raced ahead of us because they have done what needed to be done. And we have preferred to have taken a fairly scattershot, and we've made some crazy decisions and so on in terms of personnel, etc.
Yes.
But there's nothing wrong with the concession regime. I'm not going to suggest it's perfect, but once you are a registered tourism entity, you can enjoy a full suite of concessions.
Okay.
And it is nothing gets more concessions in the tourism sector. And the whole idea is, in order to be globally competitive, your inputs should be free of any imposts at all. No duties, any taxes. No duties, no taxes. Of course, any taxing you do on the back end. But as far as the inputs, you should be able to get not on the outputs. You can tax the outputs, but not the inputs. And that way we can be globally competitive. Because you are basically competing against destinations all over the world.
It is true.
And that is the philosophy of it. And it makes sense, especially where it comes to trying to get new builds. We spoke earlier about the importance of building new rooms.
Yes.
I mean, I got a lot of lashes for the Sandals and the Sam Lords, both of whom enjoyed good concessions. I got a lot of lashes for it.
Which are no.
But the Sandals site was breeding mosquitoes and rats. They don't pay taxes or employ people. You concede in order to have activity, not only for the sector, but all around the sector.
Right.
The same Barbados Labour Party that criticized Sam Lords had a retreat up there. I'm sorry, I didn't hear the ceiling collapsed on them. I'm not saying it should have happened. I'm just saying it did happen. But but if you look at that St. Philip community, Crane notwithstanding, which is an amazing project, you will now see other little food places and bars and daycare centers, and because women, especially when they're working shift, they need to have their kids looked after, hairdressers and etc. You're going to see now what you call the indirect and the induced elements of
benefits.
Tourism. And it's not just people directly working in the sector, but that other aspect of it, extremely important, particularly when we talk about having our young people being more entrepreneurial and
Yeah.
and doing their own thing. It cannot only be about getting a job. And as far as those jobs are concerned as well, there must be career paths that they can see growth. It is not fair that we have this sector and our people are left to just be, as they say, the hewers of wood and the drawers of water. They must have a place at the table or the opportunity to get at the table.
Yes.
Or set up businesses that can benefit from what's going on in the sector.
Okay. You mentioned the marketing, and it's been sporadic or just not where it should be or what we are used to in Barbados. What would you say are the elements that are missing, whether it be certain individuals or a strategy that coincides with where Barbados needs to go in terms of its tourism sector?
It lacks coherence.
Okay.
There's no philosophy. I heard the minister try to defend the Cayman Airways flight,
Yes.
putting money in that for a flight that is bringing anywhere from 9 to 12 people in when it lands. Doesn't make any sense. He defends it by saying he's going to get business from the west coast of the U.S. Well,
It's been a few months now.
I checked Expedia and Travelocity. I checked the airline websites, and there's nothing in there about Cayman Airways. The Google Travel had it as the 25th choice to get from California to Barbados.
Wow.
They still had American Airlines. They had JetBlue. They even had Air Canada. And they had, I think, United. It was the 25th cheapest option to get from California to Barbados. Mind you, we are paying for the full flight channel.
Okay.
Because when the Cayman minister came under fire, he defended it by saying, but Barbados is underwriting the leg from California to Cayman Islands. So they're laughing at us.
Yes.
And we are not getting any benefit from it. Okay. People that want to get to Barbados from California are still going to fly through Miami. They're going to fly through New York. They're not going through Grand Cayman. Okay. I don't know where this idea came from. Cayman Islands itself only has a population of 68,000 people. Yes, there are a fair set of Bajans there. And it may make sense maybe around crop over time to do a few charters or something. But a scheduled carrier that you're propping up with taxpayers,
Right.
money, that does not
make sense.
any sense. And by the way, he also misled the public when he suggested that the 4 carriers out of the U.S. that they don't have any MRGs, minimum revenue guarantees. The 4 carriers, of course, being JetBlue, American, Delta, United. They don't have any minimum revenue guarantees, but what they have is co-op marketing programs, which can be just as expensive or more expensive. And so it's a fallacy to suggest that the taxpayers are not, doing anything by way of supporting these flights.
Okay.
Since I want to see them all succeed, because the other thing that he's not going to tell you, airline executives don't make decisions in terms of route planning on the basis of a minister, how sweet he talk, if he tall, if he short, if he good looking, if he ugly, if he fat, if he slim. All they care about is what's going on with their balance sheets and the black entry on the balance sheets. Most of these companies trade publicly, by the way. So there's certain requirements where in terms of rate of return that they have to meet. The reason why a lot of these American flights are coming here, and Americans like brands, okay?
Yes, they do.
Sandals
Yes, they do.
and Wyndham International. Those 422 rooms that they criticize so badly,
Yes.
that is the reason why Delta and United are now prepared to talk to us. But you can't mention that, of course, or you can't say that, because at the very epigenesis of those projects, we knew that we had the UK market. Pretty much our brand awareness was there. The ceiling was a lot higher in the US, and so our investment strategy, and remember I spoke to you earlier about marketing and investment and product have to be integrated. You can't have them in separate corners.
Right.
The decision to go with Wyndham, the decision to go with
Sandals.
sandals, and the decision to facilitate Indigo, which is a brand of, I think, Intercontinental. It has a parent brand,
Okay.
but these are brands that will do better in North America, and that way you will see your growth. Okay. So we hope that it can continue, and that we can take it from there.
Okay.
Having, of course, said that, the UK is still our number one source market.
Yes.
We have seen a reduction in the seats out of the UK. Another bit of foolishness that we heard from the minister about a strategy to improve regional travel was to use Virgin Atlantic. Virgin Atlantic isn't providing airlift for people in the region. Virgin Atlantic is doing double drops and triple drops because Barbados can't fill the plane no more. It's a reduction of seats out of our major source market. And I'm not suggesting that we don't do more to help the regional market. That's a separate discussion we can have.
It is.
And we have to have, because the Caribbean market is very important. But don't get caught up in the reality that our major source market is under stress, and it has to be addressed, and we have to decide how we're going to do to get back our legacy players where they're supposed to be. I know to help top up the numbers, there was that Norwegian airline that was also doing a little thing during the season. But that's not, again, that's a Band-Aid type thing on a sore. You still need to talk to British Airways, Virgin, and make sure we have our numbers, make sure we have our co-op marketing campaigns, and keep our, that has been our honeypot now for some time.
Okay.
And I can tell you that the others in the region are quite jealous of what Barbados has been able to do in terms of developing that UK source market. And there's some other benefits to it. The Brits tend to stay longer, spend more money because they get more vacation time. The average American gets two weeks a year if he's lucky. Get 10 days or something like that. It's a little rough. Which again is why you focus on retired Americans. When we did the Fort Lauderdale flight, lots of retirees in South Florida. So you think
strategically.
Yes, you do. I'm not so sure that type of thinking is going on now, and you will get craziness like Bahamas Air and Cayman Airways and lauding Virgin for doing double drops and triple drops when you should be trying to fill the plane on your own. No disrespect to the region, of course. And in speaking about the region,
Yes.
you have Caribbean and Latin America, a director based in Panama City.
Yes.
How is
How's that helping?
how is he going to help get numbers out of Trinidad and Grenada and St. Vincent and Jamaica, and he's in Panama City? And don't get me wrong, as far as I know, he's not a Spanish speaker. He was actually recruited in my time. A very energetic, lively young man. He needs to be here in Barbados.
Yes.
And he can travel to Panama or to wherever. It must be cheaper than setting up a whole living and housing and whatnot. But I've noticed that this government seems to like this idea of scattering people all over the planet at great cost to taxpayers, when the truth is that with the technology available, we should be having less people overseas and more people based
Yes, I have
here.
that question to ask you on the foreign affairs side of things.
Well, we can get to that, but I don't want to. I don't understand. Particularly now with the demise of LIAT, we have a real problem with airlift in the region. And the man responsible for getting back that very important source market, which is the rest of the Caribbean, he's in Central America. That don't make no sense to me. But as I say, the lack of strategic thinking. And I know they'll clap back and say, oh, but the Latin American market and the Copa flight. I understand. But the question is, you have limited resources.
Yeah.
How do you deploy them? What is he going to do Monday to Friday in Panama that he can't do in Bridgetown, Barbados, and fly there even if it's every other month or whatever, and do what he has to do? I don't understand it.
Okay, so I have one question still on the marketing. What do you think about that slogan that was, I don't know, pushed aside very nicely under the carpet, costing Barbadians a few $100,000, and yet we do not have a slogan for tourism in the industry right now?
Well, the truth is, based on their performance and so on, it might be best that we don't have a slogan. I shudder to think what they might come up with. And
how
let,
much it
let
would cost.
Barbados stand by itself.
How much it would
Barbados, come to Barbados. Done with that. Seriously, I'll be very. The brand is very strong still, particularly in the UK, Europe, and I don't know, but I don't know how you can really defend the foolishness that took place. And they actually did, the committee that didn't have any marketing people on it came up with some alternatives, and they haven't even gone public because it was so outrageous. I remember someone had exposed them to me. I don't remember them now, but nothing at all that made any sense. And if it is, that is proving to be such a Herculean task. Just leave it out. Don't let's embarrass ourselves again, and leave it as Barbados,
and let it speak for itself.
Let Barbados speak for itself.
Okay. You mentioned a couple airlines that they've brought on of recent, Norwegian, Copa. So they're trying their best in different markets. I don't know if it's having the results that they're hoping for it to have, but in terms of the other markets that we have not really built our linkages with in the last 5 years or so, what do you think is missing from their formula?
Well, it would help if you would tell the truth. In January of 2018, a joint press release was done by the then Minister of Tourism, who you happen to be sitting with right now, and Mr. Pedro Hilbron, the CEO of Copa. We released it jointly, so his words were Panama and so on, here in Barbados.
Right.
We announced the Copa flight was going to start in July 17th, for Embraer 190 aircraft, 84 economy seats, 10 first class seats. January, we announced it for July.
Right.
There was an election in
May. Yes.
Okay. So the government changed. In May. A flight that I spent years working on. The Avianca flight from Bogota, Colombia, the Gulf flight from Sao Paulo, Brazil, all of that was used to build the case for Copa. And by the way, the minister was wrong when he said that Gulf was not out of a hub. Sao Paulo, one of the largest cities in the world. The first people that got off the Gulf plane here were Argentinians that had connected through Sao Paulo. So he didn't know what he was talking about. But he obviously didn't know what he was talking about because he said that he brought in Copa. They brought in Copa. The only thing the Barbados Labour Party did for Copa was to carry the stilt man and the Mother Sally and the tuck band and go up at the airport and greet the people coming off the plane.
Yes.
All the work was done
the foundation was
before. And we got something called Google that you can check. You can check and see the joint press release. It was January 2018. It was announced for July. And as I said, so between May and July, none of the three ministers that they had or whatever, or the three CEOs, four chairmen, none of them had anything to do with that Copa flight. So put that clear. But again, I understand when there's no vision, these things would happen.
Yes.
And that is the big problem that I believe. Vision and management. And it's laughable when the minister says that, he was able to operationalize certain things, etc.
Right.
Because that's not the case at all. The airlines, yes, we need the airlift, but we have to put people in the seats.
Right.
And this is where executive leadership, not a garrulous chairman or an invasive board or a minister who seems to be at a loss when it comes to telling the truth. You need a good CEO and team around him, okay?
Yes.
if Billy Griffith was there with that team I had around him, there's no way that Cayman Islands thing, foolishness could have happened because you got people who were doing
No,
the
I have the
day-to-day
experience.
work. Okay, and even to some extent, some of the issues that we seem to have, you mentioned the logo thing,
Yeah.
not logo, but
Slogan.
slogan, sorry. You know, you need that executive leadership. BTMI is an organization that manages many millions of dollars.
It does.
It has offices
In
all
many
over
countries.
the world, literally. And you can't just let it limber along and, you know, begging the chief finance man to come and hold on here and so on. And then, of course, you brought that guy from overseas, Lenz or Jens or
Yes.
Renz or whatever his name was.
Sherman.
I told them that was a mistake. And of course, you know, but Mia defended it. And now, of course, that they've finally come to their senses. And they have got a good local talent.
Yes.
They're, of course, trying to... They set the house on fire and no one get credit for calling the fire truck. Because Andrea represented one of those many young managers that we targeted, in essence, for the future. Yes,
Right.
she left the organization, came back to the caves, but the whole idea with people like her and the same Corey Garrett and
Yeah.
Cheryl did some work. You know, we worked with Petra. We moved her to a different market. We promoted Peter Mears. All of these youngish people that were supposed to emerge and take leadership of the organization, because for too long, BTMI had its reputation of bringing in people all the time. And that no one could see themselves growing and being promoted and getting to the very top. But we insisted on that. And Billy, it was always supposed to be what they call in cricket in terms of night watchman. He had a full career in Bermuda, and he was coming to help usher in this new generation. And of course, it took a step back with Renz.
Yes.
But at least it's now back on track. And I think they should be spanked for it, not saluted for it, because this could have been avoided, you know, years ago. And again, the lack of strategy, this feeling of you're just flying by the seat of your pants. Tourism is too important for that kind of misdirection and happenstance and instability.
Yeah.
And I hope we'll get some stability now, and that we can go from there.
Okay, in terms of the modernizing of the tourism product now, I know people have complained that the product is old, it's tired, it's not where other Caribbean islands have been modernizing their product. How do you see that impacting Barbados, and what should be being done now? We have World Cup cricket coming up in just a few months, and a lot of attention has been being paid to that. And we know they do events very sporadically and keep a lot of noise about it as well. How do you see that evolution happening, coming as a former Minister of Tourism?
Well, events for sure.
Yeah.
Events do help. But you mentioned an important part about upgrading your hotel plan. Now, it was interesting when we amended the Tourism Development Act and set up that concession regime I spoke about earlier. The BHTA, at one of their meetings, the BHTA is hardly a bastion of DLP support. The BHTA at their meeting said that over 40 hotels did refurbishment because of the elbow room they got from the concessions.
Yes.
And I think that is
Something.
very important, that we invest in the hotels, or rather we concede revenue that we would normally get, tax revenue, in expecting that the greater economic benefit is that they can it can improve and, you know, offer better room rates, etc. I can give you a real good example coming out of the same estimates. The minister, and for some reason the media picked up on it, chose to make heavy weather of the Hilton having a record year.
9 million.
In 2016, our partners, the managers, the hotel, the regional Hilton people were very happy with a record year that we had then, okay?
Yeah.
In spite of that, we understood the same point you were making just now. The hotel had not had any major refurbishment since it had been rebuilt,
In
and it was
2005.
getting a little bedraggled.
Yes.
So we took the rooms out in stages to upgrade them.
Yeah.
Okay. But you know, the minister again didn't think he should mention that the reason the RevPARs fell, revenue per available room, was because there were less rooms. They were being refurbished. And naturally, after you refurbish, you will come back with higher ADRs. So, you know, he should have at least allowed the financial controller to tell the truth that because of the refurbishment program that we did between 2016 and 2018, it was always aimed at getting a higher rack rate for the rooms. And that is what happened. But again, you know, there was this rather shaky relationship that Mr. Gooding-Edgell has with the truth seems to have impacted. And he could have told the complete, because the media picked up on it.
They did.
I mean, that happened to be, I mean, it's a little difficult for me to watch the entire thing, but, you know, because I'm employed full time. Still, unfortunately, I ain't retired yet. And, you know, I saw that piece and the media picked up on it. And it was just so void of the complete truth. Because you don't just say, you know, gazoop and get a higher ADR, the average daily
You have
rate.
to build it.
You got to do something to get your rooms up. And even you alluded to it. And we see it time and time again.
Yes.
And you know,
Missing in it.
you know what's the real heinous part about all of this? The man is a hotelier, you know. He spent his entire
Yes, it's
working life working at Sam Lord's in the Elegant. He
Elegant
knows
Group.
this.
Yeah.
And the Elegant Group was actually well known for doing just that. They would take entire properties out during the off season, refurbish them, just so they could get a higher rate during the winter season. He knows this. I might have forgiven his two predecessors, but he knows better, and still yet tried to score some political points. 6 years after you're in government. I really think this government needs to take a break.
Bajans need to give them a break.
You won the election, you won 2 elections
Yes.
convincingly. We are talking about the last government so all the time. Get on with the business.
There are 29 of them, so they have a lot to do.
Apparently, yes, they have a lot to do. So we will see how it goes.
In terms of regional travel, you mentioned there are clearly massive problems with regional travel. I believe the Antiguan government and other Caribbean governments have tried their best to get the LIAT to resurrect it in some form. Barbados pulled back. I think it was in 2018, 2019 from LIAT. How do you see us trying to turn around that much needed factor in the tourism sector?
You're going to have to attack that in a regional manner.
Right.
And the much touted ability of the leader to have all this influence all over the world, I would like to see her, exercise some of that influence right short here next door. And we're going to have to, I know the Prime Minister of Antigua can be, he's a little different.
Yes.
But don't mind. You got to talk to him. The aviation end of things is very strong there. And I think that as a region, we're going to have to look to properly address this issue of what now since LIAT is gone. Inter-Caribbean is kind of doing their thing. Inter-Caribbean, a very progressive guy from Turks and Caicos where they're based, but it's a little much to, they always wanted to come over to this part of the region, but it was more servicing. I mean, when they saw the collapse of LIAT, they thought there was a void they could fill. They have been having challenges scheduling, issues of reliability, etc. But having said that, it's a lot based on how they're geared, and they're not really set up for island hopping in the Liat sense of the word.
Right.
And I'm not sure if that is a solution to solve our problems of regional travel. I think the governments are going to have to sit down and have an honest discussion, and that doesn't mean we knock them off like old handles. There will be a role for Inter-Caribbean, but there still is a huge void that needs to be filled.
Yeah.
And it's going to require the leaders, the former shareholders of Liat and maybe a few others, can sit and come up with a solution to dealing with that problem.
Okay. Do you think Barbados should be a part of that?
Of course. Barbados has to be a part of it.
Okay.
We, as I was saying earlier, don't underestimate CARICOM as a source market. At one stage, it was number 3, actually. It was even ahead of Canada. I'm not sure what the numbers are like now. But I obviously would have taken a big hit with Liat not being around. But it's an important source market, and it's one that helps also fuel event tourism that we were speaking of.
Yeah.
And that in itself has a huge impact in communities and so on. And the whole question of visitor spend and who benefits, the regional travel, and the fact that a lot of it is around sporting and cultural events, etc. We have to plug that hole. I think that is some place where we can accord some priority.
Yeah.
I understand the existential threat of climate change and those things, but
Which have
you
their
can
place,
put them on the back burner for a little bit, and let me deal with 1 or 2 things that are pressing right
here.
Because that's what the people voted for.
It's true.
You want somebody to deal with Barbados' problems. You didn't vote for somebody to audition to get a job in New York. That's not what we need. A part-time prime minister because they're busy auditioning, because they hear they could get a pick here or there. And people are, generally speaking, getting a little tired of that element of things.
I would agree. Do you think cheaper fares would be on the cards if regional travel can happen in a way that Liat used to carry this region?
It could happen, and central to that discussion would have to be how you handle taxation.
Yes.
Because as you know, a lot of the costs associated with travel generally, not only regional travel, but we have to deal with the taxes. And hopefully we can get a boost going, and that can take it from there. And by the way, I do not think that a ferry service
I was just about to mention
in 2024. No. A ferry...
Why not?
A ferry cannot replace Airlinks. The ferry would have to be incremental.
Right.
And there are certain, groups, cultural groups, community groups, church groups, and so on, that excursions and so on. But in essence, for you to function in a modern services, a series of services-based economies, you need the air linkages, you need the airlift. The ferry is additional. The ferry also would help with export of produce and so on.
Agriculture.
Oh yes, definitely. There's a role for ferries, don't get me wrong, but it cannot replace airlines in 2024. That's just reality.
Okay.
I mean, someone will want to disagree and say that's an opinion. Well, fine, but it is a reality. You need both.
Okay. Let me just turn. I forgot one thing with respect to the investment. We have the proposed Hayat that has remained proposed since 2018. Your administration would have done major work on it and also got a major blockage on it as well. Do you have any thoughts on that and where it stands now? And what should Barbadians be asking for about the Hayat? Well,
I will not speak out of both sides of my mouth. I was a big supporter of the Hayat. It is an important project from a point of view of opening a new axis of our tourism in that Carlisle Bay, going right into the Needham's Peninsula. And I think that there's a good opportunity to bring tourism to those areas. I don't accept that because that beach has a lot of local patronage that somehow it's going to be a problem having a hotel there. We have seen in the West Coast and the South Coast and in the same St. Philip where
Yeah,
we've
it's
had
worked.
locals and visitors, playing the beaches and so on together. It's, like anything else, you have your little problem here and there, but I see no reason for it. I'm a huge supporter of it, and I sincerely hope that whatever glitches there are can be sorted and that we can see that hotel developed. It is my certain knowledge that the design team is at work.
Okay.
And whatever blockages that the government is putting in their way, they should remove them, because they certainly had an awful lot to say about investment before, and we're not seeing it.
Yes.
It's not only the Hyatt, the Pendry, the Pierhead. There are some other things that we keep hearing about. We need to get them going. I don't think the people need them to go, and we need them as well.
Yes.
Because you see, when we earn more, we then can
Do more.
borrow less. I mean, that estimates document it makes very frightening reading when you look at the summary section. You don't have to go too far. I know it's a very daunting document. Just those few tables in the front,
Yes.
and you see that we're over $1 billion deficit that has to be financed through selling bonds, as if people haven't done enough of that. Series J bonds and boss
Which were
bonds.
not,
and
the
treasury
appetite
bills.
was not there for
The appetite wasn't. I don't know where it can come from. No, but that kind of thing tells us that we do need to take fresh, creative, and immediate looks at how we earning,
Right.
and not only how we borrowing. I find people, especially supporters of this administration, are very cavalier about all of this borrowing.
Yes.
Well,
We
borrowing.
didn't do about it then.
Y'all
Where you get money
borrowed.
from?
Oh, we borrow. Everybody borrow. We borrowing. Big deal. I think that the magnitude of it now, and the fact that servicing this debt has reached a point now where it is impacting the fiscal space,
Yeah.
as the fancy term, in order for government to function.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, worrying,
Very
and why I
dangerous.
think that getting the hotel plant and getting tourism on the right strategic footing is so important.
Yes. So we know you're functioning also as the shadow minister for tourism. So what would you say is your vision, or the DLP, I should say, vision for a new tourism product with intermingling with new economic activity in Barbados? We spoke about telecoms and communication has to be part of moving forward. Where else do you see opportunities for a more dynamic tourism product?
I think a healthy embrace of, yes, the other traditional sectors for which there are natural linkages.
Yeah.
But even the ones we have to work a little harder on.
Okay.
There's a natural linkage with culture, for example. And I think that we have to try to leverage, the UNESCO inscription that we worked on so hard for Bridgetown.
Yes.
Historic Bridgetown and its garrison.
Yes.
We gotta leverage these things. The niches, I think, can provide a lot of entrepreneurial opportunities for young people. I don't want to sound like I'm repeating myself, but I think that the whole idea is, if you look at the traditional way that the sector was structured, with technology and with aggressive young whippersnappers out there.
Yes.
We have got to create avenues for them to flourish and develop. And this is one of the reasons why I thought it was a mistake to diminish, practically abolish the Tourism Product Authority. Because the Product Authority, you can have officers that can deal more intimately with those things.
Yeah.
The marketing, that's the sexy stuff, but the truth is it's very dynamic. It takes up a lot of time. You can't expect marketers to be dealing with
tourism.
product as well, visit experience, etc. And I think that the question you asked directly about the vision going forward and opportunities, etc., that the product authority would have been better positioned to do that. I'm not sure who's doing it now. And in fact, I think things are just happening, we're just freewheeling along.
Yeah.
And of course, you have creative young people who are still going to do their own thing.
Yes.
But we have to focus on that, on the future. And if Barbados has a services-based economy, we constantly say it, tourism is just one of those services.
Okay.
The truth is that you can use it to leverage into other aspects of business life and professional life, and to provide opportunities for young people.
So as time comes up, I'm going to turn the tables to foreign affairs. That is part of your shadow minister profile or portfolio. We've heard the Minister of Foreign Affairs say that there's a bill of $41.7 million for just the overseas missions. Do you think that that is a good thing at this particular point in time, given have they built out anything that's been of benefit to Barbados in any way, shape, or form in the last 4 to 5 years? They've established some new embassies. They even had a metaverse embassy. How do you see that dynamic working out, considering the bill is about 41.7 million Barbados dollars?
I think it could be significantly reduced. I think a lot more can be done from Bridgetown. And we have excellent, airlift into major capitals. You can connect, and an ambassador can be based right here and can do what he has to do in whichever country that he's assigned to. We saw, now we have Zoom and whatnot and so on. I don't think it's necessary. And the ironic thing was the whole metaverse thing was aimed at doing exactly the opposite of what this government is doing. But foreign affairs is probably suffering as well from a lack of vision, because it has been reduced to a department in the Prime Minister's office. We really don't have a Ministry of Foreign Affairs anymore. The Minister of Foreign Affairs, the Prime Minister, well, we know that well. She does all the missions and all the 75 to 80% of her travel is really foreign affairs related. So she has basically subsumed the Ministry of Foreign Affairs without saying it, and down to even having her own protocol officer in the Prime Minister's office, which is, that was always a function of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And if I'm not mistaken, S1 or S2 certainly level officer, senior officer in Foreign Affairs is always responsible for protocol. So you have a Minister of Foreign Affairs now who basically just holds her handbag for her when she's flying overseas, I suppose. No wonder you're cursing everybody, and even the people in St. Michael, St. James. We said the thing about did you tell people they're hoodlums or something?
Villagers.
Right, vulgar. I thought that was a little harsh to be describing the wife of one of your colleagues in those sort of terms. But again, you probably need something to do when the day comes, because there's nothing going on at the level of Minister of Foreign Affairs in Barbados anymore. I mean, you look at what Maxine McLean was doing. Billy Miller, to use a BLP example.
She was. There was a lot.
There were ministers of foreign affairs. We haven't had one since 2018.
Yeah.
Prime Minister doing that, doing everything else, but certainly that one. But yeah, I will only say this much though. On that issue. And again, I'm all for the linkages, South-South. Our friends in Africa who we've been talking about.
Courting.
Believe Ghana celebrating their independence today.
Today, yes.
That's wonderful. But I also believe, again, that the guiding principle that should define any foreign policy is that it advances your interests. It is nothing short of an abomination that we, and I mean CARICOM, have allowed one of our members to basically become a failed state. Haiti is a full member of CARICOM. this thing has been going on for a long time, and I understand it's reached fever pitch now. I was in contact with a few of my former colleagues that are from there, even though they're living in Miami now, and it is bad.
Yeah.
The airport is now closed, and the rebels are controlling. Yeah, he in Africa now begging for help. CARICOM should have been way more involved. And again, you advance what's in your interest. Because if Haiti gets its act together, that's a market of 11 million
benefits
people that we will have for our service providers, for our producers, which is what CARICOM is all about. I don't know how many of us can get across the Atlantic to do work in Africa. I mean, I'm not saying don't have relationships there. Not saying don't have relationships in South America. I ain't sure how many farmers going to Suriname and plant land, but anyhow, that's another thing. I'm saying Haiti is a full member of CARICOM and has been totally mistreated, frankly speaking, by the heads. There's some new effort now, I understand, and I hope that the president of Guyana and our prime minister apparently are leading this. But some months ago, Brave Davis, who was the chairman of CARICOM at the time, Andrew Holness from Jamaica, were supposedly went on a mission there and were trying to get involved. But I think we can do more. Now, I understand we can't do anything about the security situation, but we can use our same influence, that same influence that we're using trying to get the planet to cool down. We can use that influence to get maybe other people who have the capacity, maybe the Canadians. They have credibility in Haiti. You can't take the Americans. They don't have any credibility for some different reasons. Historical, and even more recently, the Clinton Foundation disaster, etc. But CARICOM should be involved in that. And these leaders that are so proud of their capacity to go all over the world and do this and do that, they should prioritize that. I think it is nothing short of an abomination what is happening in Haiti, and the fact that CARICOM has been totally a spectator, it seems, where this whole thing is concerned.
Yes. Okay. All right. So I think that brings us to the end of tonight's episode. Thank you so much for joining us, Richard. It has been our pleasure. I hope our studio audience is even more informed about tourism and where we stand, what the estimates was like. He certainly provided a lot of clarity, which the minister may not have. And we thank everyone for joining us, who joined us online. And we have something special coming for Women's International Day later this week. So watch out on our social media channels. And thank you so much for joining us. And we look forward to another episode. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.